Hi, my name is Dr. Peter Bloom, one of the authors on B872. Today we're here talking with Dr. Sarah Qureshi. Dr. Qureshi has an extremely interesting background as a social entrepreneur and value creator. And we wanted to get a chance to see and speak to her about how she thinks about values and how she came to these views based on her various experiences. With me today, I have our Executive Dean, Professor Devendra Khatwani, and he's going to be talking about how he met Sarah and the ways in which his own views of value that you've already seen chime with her own.
Thank you, Peter. Hello, Sarah. It's a real pleasure to be talking to you again. I just remember a few months ago, you and I met in Lahore at Lahore University of Management Sciences. But when I talked to you, I discovered that actually you had done a PhD from the University of Cranfield here in England and in the space engineering, and that you has then set up a company to take your research and idea of reducing carbon footprint of aviation industry into something that could be developed and developed as a business and create value, not just the societal value of reducing carbon footprint and meeting the climate challenge, but also setting up an enterprise in Pakistan. So I was so fascinated by the kind of work that you are doing, Sarah, that I thought it would be wonderful to connect with you again and bring your story to our students. So we wanted to explore different ways of what we mean by value. The whole notion is changing in society and even in our academic discourse, the meaning of value. So I thought it will be great if you were able to share some of your experiences as a scientist turning into an entrepreneur, also being a family person, raising your child. So I'm so grateful to you for finding time to speak with Peter and me today to explore some of these themes that I think will be invaluable learning resource for our management students. So thank you, and I want to welcome you formally to the Open University community by participating in this session, Sarah.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always wonderful to discuss great ideas and ideas which can make a positive impact. So I'm very pleased to be talking about it.
Okay.
And
thank you. So
it's nice to see you again.
Thank you. So could you tell us a little more about how, after you completed PhD, you ended up at the incubation center in Lahore? Can you say a little bit about that journey?
Cranfield at that time, they have a very strong university industry linkage there, and they were I felt that at that time they were really emphasizing on the societal impact of research rather than just the academic impact. So I think that kind of stirred my imagination, and I started thinking on those lines that yes, this idea or my work would not, end with my research, but it would carry on.
Yeah.
Then within that course, Cranfield was sponsoring the Clean Equity Conference in Monaco, and they were holding some student competitions to take students with good ideas to the Clean Tech Conference. And I applied for that, and there was a competition, and I won that competition in the science domain. There were two one from social sciences and one from the engineering side. So I won the engineering competition, and I went to attend the Clean Equity Conference in Monaco with the innovation research head and other faculty members at Cranfield. That was, in a way, a turning point in my life when I decided in a very tangible way that I would start my own company and I would take this forward through my company. Because obviously even with research, sometimes there is an option of continuing it with a postdoc or with having further research and getting more and more publications. But that's when that was the deciding point.
Yeah.
Finishing my PhD, I was exploring possibilities of setting up this company in UK as well as in Pakistan. But since I was living in the UK for a few months after my PhD, I was just exploring possibilities there. But then I knew that I would need to, because of my family circumstances and my background, and it's also a sense of belonging. I feel that I belong to Pakistan, and I'm from Pakistan, and I knew that I would have to go back. If you want to know about how I ended up at the incubation center, so Lahore University of Management Sciences is like, I think, the best university in Pakistan. They have the best business school in Pakistan. So they had their own center of entrepreneurship, and that was the being in Pakistan and aiming to start my own company. I think that was the logical option to take, so I opted for that. And
so when I visited your incubation center, I saw so many other young people around you who are working on different ideas. So you must be mentoring some of those people, inspiring them to do things in that way?
I strongly promote women in technology and women working on deep end technologies, women working at the back end of technology, because sometimes, IT based platforms are considered, it's like tech means is like a misnomer for IT based platforms. So I always encourage other startups to go for deeper technologies, get into the heart of the technology, and being at the back end as much as being at the front end is important. It is important to be at the back end of technology as well.
Do you feel any challenges in the context that you are trying to do in terms of supporting women? I saw there were so many women and girls who were coming out of the university are working in those incubation centers, not just in Lahore, but I saw them in Islamabad also, and I was so thrilled to see so many young women coming and participating in this.
Yes, of course, there are challenges. But yes, obviously, it's very cultural in context. In the UK, I didn't feel that there was I was being disadvantaged as being a woman. But in Pakistan, obviously, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of support, and there's a lot of promotion at present for women-led enterprises, and usually that outweighs the challenge. But yes, at times, you really need to make an effort to establish your credibility as a woman and establish your professionalism. So it is not accepted by default. I would say that is something I felt.
Yeah. What I was wanting to know is that relationship between values and value. So what you're doing has a lot of different values to it, from scientific discovery to environmental sustainability, and then to economic value. And I wanted to know just how you think about your values, how they inform what you're trying to do, and how you sometimes balance what can often be competing values.
Yes, usually the first question that when I talk about my work, the first question is, oh, wouldn't that, make it less fuel efficient or whatever? And my answer is that my objective is not making profits for the airline industry, because we are talking in the context of environment. But then, yes, we are also trying to model it as a circular economy, so that you create value for all the stakeholders, in the sense that we are using this technology to condense the contrail, causing water vapor into liquid water, which the airlines can sell to local governments. So that way they can generate a revenue from there, and that would in reverse create a demand for this technology. But yes, there are challenges because you know developing the technology is obviously a challenge in itself because it's high-end technology. But I feel that we even have to make the ecosystem around it, as in the regulatory bodies like the International Panel on Climate Change and the International Civil Aviation Authority and the United Nations framework on climate change, they can play a major role. For now, they're just saying that contrails are there. They contribute to global warming, but that's where it ends. But we need regulations which would compel airlines to engine manufacturers to adopt this technology, because this has earlier happened. There's an example in the automotive industry. You see a lot of fashionable equipment under your car which does not have anything to do with the performance of the car, but it's there because the automotive industry needs to comply to standards of emission on the ground. And the other thing is that sometimes with regulations and legislations, they need a technology backup to support them. Let's suppose they say to us today, no contrails from tomorrow. There's no way the world can stop flying. But unless they're sure that yes, there is a technology that can, that provides an alternate, and that is where the regulations uh, can play a part and they can be implemented and take effect.
One thing that we talk about in the module is the relationship between collaboration and competition. So, within traditional notions of economic value, competition is seen to drive innovation. But actually, if you look historically, and if you look within more scientific cultures, and if you actually look, as you would say, around more hard discoveries as opposed to just innovations, collaboration is incredibly important. And you've mentioned in this discussion the ways in which you have to go to competitions and things like this. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you've brought some of the ideas of collaboration, which are so central to both academia and also science, into some of the ways in which you're trying to work as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You're talking about collaboration. Yes. What I felt with the academia is, and being an entrepreneur, I think there's a difference in the pace that they work, because in the academia, things were like, when I started exploring the possibilities of taking this on within the academia, maybe as just the natural route for professors, that you take up a position in a university and you're teaching and you are continuing this as part of the research. But then I felt that the pace of development would be very slow there. So with entrepreneurship, when you are like, setting up a company and working as a CEO of a company, you have the freedom to be more aggressive, and you are interacting and collaborating with other, you know, players in the field who are equally aggressive. Because nowadays, as they say that, the value of time is extremely critical. I mean, I don't want to be developing this when, the jet engine would phase out. So we don't have much time to lose. So that was one of my concerns in collaborating with academia. But yeah, basically that. But yes, I believe that, well, for the development of the core research, I think the academic environment is more conducive. Like, when you are starting with a very basic idea and taking it through mathematical validation and then simulation, and so for that stage, because when we in terms of technology, we usually gauge it with NASA's technology readiness levels. So that's from 1 to 9. 1 is just when it's a concept, just an idea, and then your design, and then mathematical validation, and then experimental validation, and then you prototype it on a small scale model and a large scale water till 9 when it's commercially flying. But yes, when you're actually prototyping, and as I said, just building the ecosystem around it as well, that's when I think one needs to it's better if one switches to the commercial side or takes the commercial route towards entrepreneurship.
So what you are describing is there's this stage in terms of value creation from a concept which may have ultimately value, from commercial to environmental value. So in your case, you had a fantastic idea of doing something with jet engine which would capture the fumes coming out of engine in the sky and convert that into water, and then do something with it so that it doesn't contribute to the atmospheric pollution. So in terms of personal experience, this is quite pulling oneself in two directions. At one end, you are working in a very collaborative way on the technical side. On other side, when you want to take it to market, you had to be, in that you use the word aggressive and marketing and competition and so on. And then of course, you have a third dimension of your family responsibilities. So I'm
Yes.
curious to know that you had these fantastic but very challenging behavioral challenges that you had to adapt to collaborative culture, competitive culture, and the culture, the social culture. How do you reconcile all that?
Okay, yes, you're right. When in a collaborative culture, and as a student, it's a very protected environment, I would say, and also a very different mindset. The way you look at things, and the way you approach things, and the aspirations. And then when you are taking the commercialization route, it's totally different. So I think that's where, I mean, this is something, that's where entrepreneurship has a very strong role to play, especially for people who don't have a business background. I mean, and that's what it's all about. And I think it's just the right thing that's happening, with setting up of incubation centers and this promotion of entrepreneurship, because as a scientist, you're thinking differently, and I never realized that until I decided to go into this commercial line. That's when I realized that my approach and my way of communication is very science oriented. I mean, if I talk, if I would talk in a room full of aerospace scientists, I could communicate very well. But with people with a business background, it was a challenge. But that's what I learned at the incubation center. I learned the language of commercialization and the business language and how to get across, because generally otherwise, and that is where the challenge is, where I think there's a gap, that some people, some students, professors, they're doing some amazing work in the universities with brilliant ideas, breakthrough research, but then they don't know how to bring it to the market, and they cannot get it across. And it's not, it's just because it's a different way of thinking, and you need that training with entrepreneurship
Yeah.
to to understand that yes, there are two different ways of thinking,
Yeah.
and they are both correct, and that you need to switch as per the requirement of whom you are communicating with. This is what I learned through. entrepreneurship. Although when I attended courses of entrepreneurship, I got a bit of opportunity at Cranfield University. I attended one of their workshops on social venture challenge. So it was just because when I could get babysitting arrangements for my daughter, I was able to attend those. So that's where the learning started. But then I did a lot of courses here uh, at the National Incubation Center in LUMS, where I developed these skills. And that's something we have to, because sometimes there's like one becomes complacent that, oh, with a PhD degree, and you think that, oh, you are just you have it all and you know it all. But then that complacency and that attitude can be damaging. So in that way, you really have to you know
Yeah.
learn
Yeah.
learn
I think
special skills if you
you
want to
have
go
touched
into
upon.
this
Yeah.
commercialization route.
I would like to close by saying one thing, Sarah, which I keep saying all the time. You mentioned about need to learn, that
Yes,
even if you have a PhD, be humble, because I think for me every qualification is license to learn further.
that's
And
very
so that's what we pride ourselves on as a university. We consider ourselves as a university of lifelong learning.
mhm.
And
That's very,
in
so you
my
always
in
have to keep
yes,
learning.
yes. So thank you, Sarah, for all your time. I know we are in different time zones, but you have been fantastic. It has been real great pleasure for us, and I'm sure our students will benefit from talking to you and listening to your story. Thank you for joining us.